Ready for episode number 75?
75?
I know. We've got another special one for you.
Okay.
So, Jamie, can a principal stop a student newspaper from publishing articles simply because they don't approve of what the student journalists want to publish?
Well, if you ask educators, they're probably going to say maybe, or I don't know, unless they're chalk and gavel listeners.
Unless they
right?
listen to us, of
Yes,
course.
then they're going to know. But if you ask lawyers, they're probably going to say it depends. And then they're going to say, well, you know what? That was answered in Hazelwood versus Kuhlmeier. And today, we're lucky to be talking with a former student whose name has been attached to that topic for nearly 40 years. That's right. Today, we'll be digging into the famous school newspaper free speech case with none other than Cathy Kuhlmeier. Yeah, exciting, huh?
I'm pretty pumped.
Yeah, so this was the case from the 80s that produced the rather significant school-sponsored speech carve-out to the Tinker's free speech ruling. So stay tuned, everybody. Cathy Kuhlmeier will give us all the deets, as the kids say. Or, I don't know, do they even say that anymore? That was probably like 90s. I don't know.
You're asking the wrong person.
Whatever. All right, welcome to Chalk and Gavel, where we explore how the law shapes education one case at a time. I'm Jamie Cudlitz. I'm a former middle school math teacher and principal.
And I'm Chris Thomas. I've been a high school English teacher and a school attorney. Now we're both professors of educational leadership, spilling the tea on the fascinating stories connecting the courtroom to the classroom. Is that more recent? That feels more recent.
That's more recent. Yeah, you got it. You're young.
Chalk and Gavel is for educational purposes only. While Chris and Jamie always try to provide accurate information, the law is like what I'm willing to eat. It's always changing. This podcast is not legal advice and does not create an attorney-client relationship, but they promised me it would be a lot of fun. For you. Can I get my candy now?
So the kids are alright. So the kids are alright. So the kids are alright.
So, Jamie, do you have our bell ringer today?
You know what, Chris? I do not, because who needs a bell ringer when in celebration of our 75th episode, we are joined by a students' rights champion, Cathy Kuhlmeier. Cathy, thank you so much for joining us. We are honored to have you here on Chalk and Gavel.
Jamie and Chris, thank you so much for having me. It's quite an honor to get to do this with you. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining. We're so excited to hear maybe your side of the story. But before we jump into the case, I actually have a really important question to ask. Is it strange knowing that your case is taught in virtually every education law and student journalism course, but that most of us call it Hazelwood after the school rather than Kuhlmeier? Is that weird?
It is. And I guess it's because it started with us. So I don't like the fact that it ended up as Hazelwood, but it is what it is.
Well, so that's kind of my, in legal convention, it's, you're not supposed to use government entities as like the short form for case names. So like in education law, we tend to use the school's name, but if we, didn't use the school's name, used your name, we would call this Kuhlmeier. So like, do you have a preference like about what we call it?
No.
Because I don't mind calling it I don't mind changing it in all my classes.
Right. Because this is honestly, I've been debating whether or not this is a fight I want to pick. Right. Like, do I want to like die on this hill of calling it by the student's name? So basically, Cathy, I'm asking for your permission to fight this fight.
Take it on, Chris. Go with it.
All right. We're going to call this Kuhlmeier. Heard it here first.
Let's do it. All right. Well, let's dive into it. So as Chris alluded to before, if you've ever taken an education law class or listened to this podcast, you have almost certainly heard of Hazelwood School District versus Kuhlmeier. It is one of the landmark student speech decisions in education. It determined that schools can exercise editorial control over school-sponsored student publications when their actions are reasonably related to legitimate pedagogical concerns. That's a long sentence. But the cool thing is that while many of us know the rule, far fewer know the full story behind it. So today, we're here with Cathy Kuhlmeier, one of the student journalists at the center of this case. We're going to revisit what happened inside that school newsroom, what it was like to become the plaintiff in a Supreme Court case while still in high school, and how Cathy views the decision today. Also, what she hopes school leaders would take away from it now that we're more than 4 decades out. So that's a lot, right? We're going to do it all today.
It hasn't been that long, has it?
Has it?
That hurts.
I listen, I was around. I wasn't in high school. I was around. But it's, you know, it's interesting how this case has lasted 40 years. You know, it's a big case. There's a lot to it, right?
Right. And the Supreme Court hasn't taken up another school-sponsored student speech case since. Like, this is it.
Right. I mean, they're kind of messing around on the periphery right now with, with a lot of the cases that we've already talked about, right? With, the Mahmoud case. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, similar kinds of stuff, but not directly like this. Right. Yeah. So in our line of work, preparing school leaders, Hazelwood has kind of become...
Nope. Kuhlmeier.
What? Did I skip?
No, it's Kuhlmeier. We're calling it Kuhlmeier.
Oh, we're calling...
Cool.
Sorry.
Kuhlmeier.
Cool. Okay. Listen.
Kuhlmeier.
Kuhlmeier. That's important to know.
That is. Oops.
So
Sorry.
now
Okay.
we're not going to call it Hazelwood anymore, and we're not going to call it Kuhlmeier. We're going to call it Kuhlmeier. Okay. So all of you listeners, take note.
Right.
In our line of work, preparing school leaders, the Kuhlmeier case has become kind of a shorthand for a huge rule or a legal standard in schools. People hear that, and they automatically think about school-sponsored speech, legitimate pedagogical concerns, and censorship. But before all of that, you were just a part of a group of students writing for a school newspaper, right? And so I'd love to just start there. Could you tell us, who was Cathy Kuhlmeier in 1982 in high school before all this began?
So I was a junior in high school, and I was in Journalism 1, and I was going to learn how to be a journalist. So in J1, we did all the prep work. We learned about prior restraint. Little did I know how important that was going to become a few short months later. And we also learned about John and Mary Beth Tinker and the standard that came from that of students do not shed their right at the schoolhouse gate. And I thought, how brave they were that they would stand up and take on their school because they felt so strongly about something. Again, if I only had the foresight to know what was coming down the road.
Right. Sounds like foreshadowing.
Yes, where would we be now?
Right.
But we had an amazing teacher, and I hope it's kids today still have that opportunity to have just an amazing teacher. His name was Mr. Sturgis, and we were preparing to be the next semester J2 Spectrum staff. So fast forward now into J2, and we wanted to do something a little more hardcore. Now I'm talking not, the dirt and all that kind of stuff. But our paper generally did really pretty and fluffy stories. So we talked about the homecoming court or what was happening with the theater productions or how good or how bad our sports teams were. We wanted to do something. It depended on the team.
Okay.
Some of the sports teams that came out of Hazelwood were pretty accomplished, so that was a nice thing. But back at that point, I was doing all the right things in school. I was involved in just about everything that I could be. I attempted soccer, wasn't my thing. So I was the coach or the helper to the coach. And I was a thespian, an honor society, marching band. So I was doing all of the things, but I really liked to write. So journalism to me seemed like a good segue for something that I could work into. And I also had the creative side. So that's why when J2, I got elected to be the layout editor. Wasn't actually the editor-in-chief, so that's a misnomer that happens on that one. But I was working to make the papers pretty.
Okay.
So we went back in the terms, and when I talked to the kids about, and I talk about the morgue, they're like, oh, the place for the old dead people. No, journalistic terms, it's the past warehouse, if you will, of past editions, story ideas, photos, references, things that you could go back through and check out and maybe just get some ideas for something new. So we were digging through the morgue, and we came across an edition underneath a different principal, underneath Dr. Negri, that was 10 years old. And in that edition, they talked about, imagine this, the problems of teenagers. Who'd have thought?
Hey.
10 years later, they had problems then. 10 years forward, still having problems. Pregnancy, divorce, runaways, marriage. We thought, you know what? We have a pregnancy problem in our school. And to give you kind of some proportion of the school, it was a student body of about 2,500, so it was a big school in North County, which is a suburb of St. Louis. And at any given time, we could have 25 to 40 young ladies that were pregnant.
Oh.
We had a pregnancy problem.
Wow.
So we wanted to talk to some students, and we picked out 3 different girls who were brave enough to come forward and tell their story. We did the whole interview with them. In the beginning of the stories, there was a blurb that said we had changed their names because we wanted to protect their identities, because they were really stepping out in faith and trusting that we were going to do the right thing. We also gave the gentleman an opportunity, because obviously it takes 2 to do those type things. And so when the stories were finished, as part of being a responsible journalist, again, kudos to Sturgis for teaching us, be credible, be kind to your sources. You're going to get more, with helping and being kind to them than being ugly. So when everything was finished, we said, here's the stories. Would you review it? And if there's any mistakes at all, anything you don't like, let us know. But let's go one step further. If everything is good with you, sign it. But also, because most everybody in those stories were minors, take it back to your parents. Let your parents know what you're saying. Have them sign off on it.
Oh, so this is what you did with the students' sources, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
With all in the pregnancy stories. So we were making sure that we were clear on everything, that we were good. If there was any pushback on anything, we'd take it away. There were no names left in the story whatsoever other than the fictitious names. We did a story on divorce, and that touched on maybe reasons parents were getting divorced. My father was one of them that was interviewed in the story because he was a raging alcoholic. He never quite figured it out. But in the neighborhood that I lived in, there was one way in and one way out. There was a center median. And the soccer coach lived on the 3rd house on the left. And one day my dad came home so very lit, he drove across the center median and hit the soccer coach's house. Inserted the car into the house. Now, don't you know that one way in, one way out, there's a lot of traffic, and lo and behold, fellow students went through that way also, and they, I was, like I said, I was involved in everything, so everybody kind of knew whose parents were whose. Right. Did you see what Cathy's dad did?
Sure.
Did you see? And the next day I was mortified, because I'm going back to school, and the students are like, pss, 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 whispering, talking about me. And I'm like, I didn't do this.
Wow.
And so the justification and reasoning that we wanted so much for that story to publish is because high school is hard enough. It's hard, but let alone when you have parents that are causing reactions to other students to you. That's not fair. So we wanted to try and help kids know you're not alone on the walk. There's others that are like you out there that are struggling, going through similar things. In the story about runaways, we talked about maybe fictitious reasons, maybe not, maybe things, what were going on, why someone would consider running away. And we gave hotline numbers in there that if you were considering running away, take a phone call, take a minute and make a phone call before you consider doing something like that. And this one was the hardest for me that it didn't run, because back when I was in high school, I worked at Target, and it was Saturday afternoon, and I was a cashier, so I was right up in front. And one of my student friends came in, and I'm like, hey, how's it going? And he was like, whatever. He went into the bathroom. I didn't know at that time he was in the process of running away. He took his life in the bathroom.
Oh, wow. Goodness.
And that one hurts because, as a journalist, not every story that you write is going to apply to everybody. But if you can talk to make a connection with one person, and they like, oh, okay, I'm going to rethink that. You've done your job. You really have done your job. Yeah. And that's what it was about, is connecting with the audience and giving them alternatives. And with the pregnancy stories, the reason that we chose these three girls was because their takes on everything were very different. One was sunshine and rainbows. Yay, I'm going to have a baby. One was like, going to have a baby. One was like, dang, blew that.
Wow.
But we wanted the different opinions, and it wasn't the how-tos and the why-fors. It was the no. Mm-hmm. Think about it before you do it, because you're not only impacting your life, it's a trickle effect. Who else is being affected by this? So it was giving them caution before they made that one exciting moment that's going to cost them a lifetime of potential change.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, were you concerned or nervous about running these pieces, given the fact that, it had all just been kind of fluff and bubblegum prior to that? Like, did you have any trepidation about pushing this through?
No. Sturgis was all in favor of it. He thought it was a great run for some story topics, again, that were still relevant. But little did we know, as we were in the process of working all these articles up, there was bad blood between Mr. Sturgis and Mr. Reynolds, our principal.
Oh.
And Mr. Sturgis made the decision to quit teaching and leave.
Right.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's where things started to go sideways for us, is because we're nearing the end of preparation for this, because this was the May 13th, 1983 edition of the Spectrum. And midway through that production piece, Sturgis left. They brought in a substitute teacher who had no background in journalism. She was more just a babysitter. Mm-hmm. And, we go and ask her questions, and she didn't have a clue. So I don't know. She went to Reynolds and said, hey, I need help. But the decision was made to bring in Mr. Emerson, who was the advisor from Hazelwood Central.
Oh.
So we're now, rival. We were always rivals against Central.
Of course. Because you guys were East, is that right?
We were, East. Yeah. There was Central and then West.
Okay.
So we get to the point that the paper is ready for press. Emerson comes over. It's a Friday afternoon, and we're gone. We're thinking, we're so excited about and stoked that, Monday we're going to get a chance to sell this paper because it prints over the weekend. And we didn't know at the time that prior restraint was happening, that Emerson took the paper down to Reynolds. Prior review. There were supposedly objections to it.
Right.
The paper comes back Monday, center spread's gone. And we're like,
so you, no notification, nothing, like all this kind of happened between Friday and Monday, and you didn't know anything? It was all between Emerson and Reynolds?
Yep. Every last bit of it.
The first time you noticed that these articles aren't in there is when you literally opened a paper?
Yes.
Oh man.
No.
Yeah.
So
we had been excited to go sell, and it's not there. So we're like, well, what do we do?
Right.
So we're going to take a stand on it. And some of us had our big girl pants on, and we went downstairs to Reynolds' office, and we're like, hey, we need to talk to you. Where's the rest of our paper? This isn't what we produce. We're not selling.
Okay. And that was that Monday? Like the same day?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
So we're hot because we always sold the paper the same day we received it. We would, our classroom, our school was just kind of a different school. So we didn't really have like hard walls. We had a lot of just movable walls. Other than the second floor, which is the library in the journalism class. So we had gone downstairs and we're, pushing our way into the office saying, we need to talk to you. We have a problem. And so we're like, where's the rest of the paper? He goes, oh, that's trash.
Is that really? That's what he said?
Verbatim?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Huh.
Now, do you think that perhaps I was a little outspoken then?
I guess so.
Yeah. And I never did anything disrespectfully, but I guess I have that challenging mind that it's always on the go. So I wanted to know why. And he said, well, those articles are too mature for an immature audience. And I happened to say, well, if you're old enough to get pregnant, shouldn't you be old enough to read about it? And again, I reminded him, we weren't telling them how to. We were telling them reasons why not to.
Right.
So
wow.
he said,
I want to say, like, I am sure that there are many thoughts going through Chris's head right now.
The legal alarm bells are going off.
Yeah, because, it's so funny when we talk about, legitimate pedagogical concerns and things like that, the sort of legal standards that we toss around in wake of the Kuhlmeier case. Like we're talking about things that I don't know. I would think we would advise or caution our aspiring school leaders against saying things like that and and censoring student speech, on those kinds of grounds, right? And like I don't recall seeing that language in the court opinion. And right. And I mean, unfortunately, that's not uncommon with a lot of these cases. You miss a lot of that stuff, which is why we love talking to people who were there. But like,
right. Yeah. The court tends to tell maybe a sanitized version. If you're being generous. Because, that's always been one of my questions about this case, is like how much of the justification for removing the articles was just like after the fact justification that a lawyer had to make work in court.
Yeah. Okay. So sorry, I interrupted. You're in his office and he says they're trash and you're like, what's the deal? And then what?
So have you guys seen the actual layout?
Yeah.
If you Google the image. Okay. So there's a ghosted pregnant girl, right? Yeah. He said, well, I can tell everybody who's in those articles. He goes, I can pick out every last one of them. I said, can you? Can you now? Because he was the first year principal there. So he'd made it through successfully, survived one semester. And I said, so if you know who every person within that is, I said, who's that pregnant girl? And he named somebody and I said, no. And I had a sweater tied around my waist at that point in time and I untied it, rolled it up into a ball and stuck it underneath my sweatshirt and struck the same pose. And I said, Mr. Reynolds, I said, that's me. I wasn't pregnant until I was 28. And it wasn't, again, not to be disrespectful, but it was to prove the point. You don't know who everybody is.
Right.
So he said, well, I'm going to tell you how it's going to be. He said, if you guys aren't going to sell the paper, then there won't be a next edition. Well, the next edition was to the senior accolades with most likely to succeed, cutest couple, where are you going to college, blah, 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 blah. So we went back upstairs and we're going to be politically correct because, that's what we were trying to be, was adult about this. And so we took a vote and there were more seniors in the class than juniors. Of course, seniors prevailed. They went downstairs to sell the paper, and I had my one really big girl brave moment of high school, and I snuck out of class. And I went across to the library where there was a landline phone because, we didn't have cell phones then, and I called Sturgis. And I said, Sturge, we just got censored. He was like, shut up. And I'm like, no, I'm serious. We just got censored. He was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, center spread is gone from the edition. And he was like, are you kidding me? And I'm like, no. I said, what do we do? What do we do? And he said, well, I recommend you call the ACLU.
Okay.
Now, I didn't know who in the heck the ACLU was.
Right.
I wasn't
Right.
woke student.
Yeah.
So, but because I believe so much in that man and what he said, I'm like, okay. He goes, they will take care of things for you. Call them.
So
Yeah.
you weren't thinking like this is a violation of my First Amendment rights. You weren't thinking anything like that. You were just upset. Is that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We just
So
took
you
it
did
to the
mention, like,
basics.
Yeah, you'd
Yeah.
studied Tinker, so like you had some idea of like, journalists
Activism. Yeah.
or like or First Amendment student, like how it protected students. So like, thinking about Spectrum, the newspaper, like two questions, like, was this a normal procedure? And two, like, what was your take on like the status of the Spectrum newspaper? And like, was it your paper? Was it the school's paper? Like, what sort of, I guess, journalistic protections did you expect within that paper?
To our knowledge, Sturgis told us through and through he never would take the paper down to Reynolds, ever. They had that
Really?
agreement that they knew, that they knew what was going on. So it was completely a practice from Mr. Emerson at Central. And, we thought that the Tinker standard applied. That's what we were
Yeah.
taught, that we had our First Amendment rights and we were protected by that. And we weren't writing bad stories. We were writing
Right.
good quality, well researched articles that would maybe help someone.
That were meaningful, right? Like, I think that's the, what you were saying about all these stories being deeply meaningful to the experiences that people at your school were going through or experiencing. Yeah.
Wow.
So wait, it wasn't a practice to give the newspaper from the journalism teacher to the principal.
Correct.
Okay. Well, that's strike number one against the Supreme Court's ultimate decision,
Yeah.
because the Supreme Court basically kind of said like, oh, that was just the practice. That's how things were done. And we all know that deviation from established procedure is usually a problem when it comes to whether or not someone's constitutional rights have been violated.
Oh, there's all kinds of deviations. Wait, the story gets better.
Oh.
And wait, there's more to steal.
Do
Jamie's
tell.
line.
Do tell.
Yes. So we are, the seniors are downstairs selling the paper. I've come back into the class and I'm talking to the rest of the staff. And I'm like, okay, here's what Sturgis said we should do. So we decided we would go home that night and talk to our parents and make a decision on what we should do. And my mama was a Spitfire. I'm pretty sure the apple didn't fall far from the tree. And I remember very much the conversation. She said, do you think what you're doing is right? And I said, yes. She said, is it hurting someone else or is it helping someone else? And I said, it's hurting us as the staff because we spent a lot of time on these articles. And it's keeping us from helping others. She said, okay. She said, then you have my support. So we contacted the ACLU and they were very interested in speaking with us. So it ultimately ended up with myself, Leslie Smart and Leanne Tippett that made contact with the ACLU. They invited us to come down and we met with them and multiple of the attorneys there. And they made the decision that they would file a case on our behalf.
Wow.
So when all of this happens, then it becomes an absolute a media storm at that point in time.
Yeah.
And the media is converging on Hazelwood East. And now Mr.
Okay.
Reynolds is not a happy camper.
Mhm.
Because
Sure.
what was meant to be protected within the walls of Hazelwood, that we had a pregnancy problem, even though the local community could come in and purchase our paper for 25 cents, just the same way as the students would, they'd have to buy it. It's now running across the regular main media sources, the both papers. The USA Today has picked it up and run with it. The Riverfront Times was a local paper besides St. Louis Post-Dispatch and St. Louis Globe Democrat. They ran the articles in full, as well as the New York Times.
Wow. So, yeah, I never even put that together. This, like, there could be a potential reputational concern here. And, like, going back to my question about, like, whether or not the stated reasons are the real reasons that the principal did what they did, but, like, maybe there is something there about that reputational concern, or at least, as this thing progresses, like, it's almost kind of like the Streisand effect, where the more you work to silence something, the louder it gets.
Oh, yeah. It blew up. So do you guys remember Phil Donahue?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally. Chris doesn't. Chris is young.
Chris is
He's
like,
a baby.
what?
Yeah.
I was around when the decision was made in this case.
So let me back it up and explain it to you when I'm talking to students. Oprah. Bill Donahue is the Oprah of the 80s.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Okay. So Leslie, Leanne, and myself were asked to fly to Chicago and be live on the Phil Donahue show.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So we got,
And you're a
again,
senior
permission.
in high school at this point?
I think I had finally made it to the senior year when that went down.
Okay.
Early into the senior year. And this is where things start really getting good. So live broadcast, and they're talking about, obviously, how do we get to this point? How do we feel about things? And we're just being very honest with it. We're 3 high school kids and we're telling the truth because that's what we were raised to do.
Mm-hmm.
So the next day when I get back to school, I have an invitation for a visit with Mr. Reynolds.
Invitation is an interesting word choice.
Kinder, gentler. So I'm armed with my note from my mom because my mom had written a letter as my excuse, and he said, Miss Kuhlmeier, where were you yesterday? And I said, I was in Chicago and I was on the Phil Donahue show. And he says, I'm aware. He said, you didn't ask my permission first to go.
Oh, wow.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, my mom said I could. Here's my note. And in my world, my mom is my alpha and omega in my life. So she says I can, then I can. And he said, if you ever attempt to do something like that again without asking my permission, I will either 1, suspend you or 2, expel you.
Whoa.
Wow. So now we're in retaliation land.
Yeah.
Because retaliation, someone for protected speech, is a big no-no.
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to see, Cathy, when you said earlier about after you speak to people, they tend to teach the case a little differently. I'm starting to see that.
Uh-huh.
There's a whole lot more than the 10,000-foot view that's in the
Sure.
textbook.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of dirt. I've been asked to write a book about my experiences with it.
I'd read it.
So it's something that is a possibility.
Great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Please do.
Thank you. So as time marches on, like I said, I was a good kid. I was never in trouble. I mean, I never even had detention, and that was threatening to me. And I understand why he was doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But in that open concept school that I talked about, every day in my chemistry class, he would walk by, look over our half wall, and ask Mr. Moore if I was in there. He's like, she's right here. Would you leave her alone?
Wow.
Ooh.
So other
things.
teachers were kind of seeing that you and some of the other students were who were involved were kind of being targeted, or was it just you? It was
no.
Okay.
I think I took the brunt of it because my name is what was listed,
right.
and I don't know if he ever caught on to the at all for Leslie and Leanne.
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Not even going to try and figure that one out.
Sure. So how did the larger school community respond to this whole situation? Like, the empty pages in the newspaper, the lawsuit, all of it.
Like, were they rallying behind you, or was this divisive in the school? Like, how did all that play out?
I would say it was a split because some of the kids did understand what we were doing. Some of the teachers didn't like the light that was being cast on the school.
Sure.
And I'm like, you guys are the one that gave us this great education. We're standing up for what you taught us.
Right. They literally handed you the tools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So throughout the rest of the year, he would follow me around. And finally comes that big moment of graduation. And, kids are excited about walking across the stage and getting their diploma. Having that clicking picture.
Uh-huh.
My graduation photo is the side of his head. He wouldn't even look at me.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So it's just a lot of weirdness that goes on with it. But and partway through that, we were in, we had depositions and everything. So we went through the Missouri Supreme Court. Obviously, we lost. And that was still during high school. We go into the appellate courts and we prevailed. And we kind of thought, it's probably going to be the end of the road because what are the chances that Supreme Court's going to pick up little old Hazelwood or Kuhlmeier, as we call it now.
Yeah.
So, long story short, obviously they decided to continue down the road with it.
Right.
But during my time in college, I majored in mass communications with emphasis in journalism and commercial art. And I went on to edit papers there and edited the yearbook there. And at this point in time, the case is still rolling through the courts. And the attorney that they had appointed for us was Miss Leslie Edwards, and she was a newer attorney. And so I was the only one of the three of us that went away to college. And I was only 125 miles away, but it was long distance calls.
Right.
So I never got the notification that Supreme Court picked it up.
Really?
I never got to go. The court
You didn't go?
I didn't know about it.
So
My
like
mom
they
was
had
still in,
they had the oral arguments and everything and you didn't know?
she didn't even provide notice to my mom, who was still in St. Louis.
Huh.
So she could have easily called my mom, and my mom would have eaten the long distance phone call cost.
So when did you find out it was a Supreme Court case?
When the decision came down January 13th, 1988.
Oh.
No. You just picked up a newspaper and your name is on the front cover?
Oh no, Chris. Oh no. So again, we still didn't have cell phones. We had a landline phone out in the hall of our dorms. And I was a resident advisor, and one of the girls came and knocked on my door and said, "Hey, you got a phone call." And I answered the call, and it was, I didn't even know the person's name. But they said, "Hey, I'm a local reporter with the Southeast Missourian," which was our local paper there. And he said, "Hey, I want to get your opinion on losing the case." And I'm like, "Excuse me?"
Because at this point in your head, you'd won. Like that was where it was left, right?
Right. Yeah, because the students prevailed at the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals. They applied Tinker and said there was no substantial disruption. Students win.
Wow. And
Leslie and Leanne both got to go, but I never knew.
No.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
wow.
what I learned secondhand and from listening to the Oye Project, which have you guys listened to it?
Mm-hmm.
So as the justices are talking to Miss Edwards, they're having to repeat themselves or rephrase questions because she's not understanding. So the things, if you go back and listen to it, where I had originally started with that we had gotten permission from all of our sources, we had signed names, no names were left in there, we had the consent, we had everything right. Guess what wasn't brought up?
All of that.
All of it.
Wow.
And they would keep going back and saying, "Miss Edwards, what are you trying to say? Miss Edwards, what do you mean?" Now, they also, the other second chair, third chair on the case, they had said, "You're not ready for this. Let someone else carry this. This is too big for you to handle it." And she would not back down. She also refused to go the day before they offer essentially a mock trial to just kind of get your jitters out. She refused to do it.
Really?
And karma came full circle, unfortunately for her. She was a very nice lady, but she got sick, she lost her practice, and passed away.
Oh, no.
And was that like recent, within, a short number of years or something like that after this case?
I think it was probably within
it
a couple years within the decision.
Right. Which just highlights that, there's human stories on all aspects of this, right? Because, we tend to talk about the law as this, objective thing or, this mythical thing that happens with, reasoned deliberation with people in robes who are, personless, essentially. But, everyone is people in this. So, the people arguing the case, the people who take the case, the people who decide the case.
They're all bringing their histories, their experiences. They're bringing all of that.
Their egos.
It's all, wow. That's and I'm floored that you had no idea that this even was a case until you got that call. That's amazing.
Seriously.
And I think that's probably also not okay with the way that when your case is let me back up. When something goes to court and it carries your name, you're required to have notification of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a work comp adjuster. I deal with attorneys on a daily basis. I understand
Right.
all of that. So
Yeah.
there was some missteps and all of that was going on.
Sure. Some professional responsibility concerns, maybe.
But you didn't know any of that at the
Yes.
time. You were just like taken aback, right? Or like, I assume.
Completely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had no concept, and I didn't have any comment that I could make that probably would have been polite to make to the journalist. So I just said,
Yeah.
I don't
I
need
don't
to
know what
talk
you're
to my
talking
attorney.
Right. Yeah.
And then when I called her, she refused my call.
Oh,
Really?
Yeah.
gotta have the hard
So-
conversation.
So there were the other two students who were involved as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you said that they attended the oral argument. Did you ever speak to them? Like, what were the conversations like there? Oh, you never spoke to them either.
Now, after we had all just kind of lost touch after we went through the appellate
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
and prevailed, we're kind of like, okay, good. And then
Yeah.
never knew anything. I mean, it's
Wow.
kind of similar. John Tinker didn't get to go to his because he overslept and missed his flight.
Yeah, that's right.
So
Yeah.
me and John are buds.
Oh, that's one, like, we in episode 50, we talked to Mary Beth
Yeah.
Tinker, and one thing we asked about was, like, have you talked to the other plaintiffs? Because, like, it's a very small club.
Yeah.
So, like, it sounds like you've been in touch with some of these other students' rights litigants.
Yeah. So we can take a fast forward then, through that point in time from 88 till, I don't know, 90. I guess one of my first trips out and actually starting to speak was probably 98 or 90, no, probably 99 or 2000.
Okay.
wow.
And I had been invited up to Indiana to keynote there at a conference, and they were going to give me an award. And it's my daughter is kindergartner, and so I had gone into school, and I'm dropping her off, and God love her, kindergartner minds. So she's introducing me to the teacher because it was first day of school. We had met in the meet the teacher kind of thing, but this is the first time, dropping her off. So she says, and Miss Dorlin, this is my mom, and she's going to go bye-bye for a couple of days because she's going to talk about how much of a troublemaker she was in school. And I'm like,
Perfect introduction.
thank you, daughter. So that, but over the course of the years from then, it just has kind of morphed into more and more. So fast forward all the way into 2012, I am going to UMKC Law School, and it is a symposium on the top main 5 cases. So it was first time I met John and Mary Beth. Matt Frazier was zooming in. They talked about long hits for Jesus, and then there was one on religion.
Frederick, yeah.
Yep.
So they brought in Mr. Reynolds.
Oh.
And it's
Is
just
this the first time you've talked to him since then?
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Did you know? Did they give you a heads up about that?
Yeah, so I knew he was coming.
Okay.
So we're out at the like in the underhang of the parking lot, waiting for the shuttle to come pick us up from the hotel and to take us over to UMKC. And so with Mr. Reynolds walks out, and I'm just like, oh boy, this is going to be fun. And he's all like, oh my gosh, it's so good to see you, and coming in for the hug. And I'm like, whoa, you're in my bubble, brother. We're not friends. Still harboring a little bit of hostility here. He was like, oh, you're always such a great kid. And I'm like, have you bumped your head? Because wasn't feeling that at all.
Yeah.
So this is a huge mock courtroom that we're in, and it is 2 levels. There's an upper level on it that is an open window in this library portion of it, and they brought in high school students, educators, campus students, professors, and it is wall-to-wall standing room only people. And this is again, the first time I am face to face with him, and it's just he and I sitting there having this conversation. And so he's telling everybody, oh, she was such a great kid. She was always doing the right thing. And I'm like, is that why you followed me? And, my graduation picture's the side of your head. Oh, no, I don't know. It wasn't like that. And I'm like, yeah, but it was. It really was. So the question comes up. This is where it really gets good. He says, question was posed to him, so why did you censor? And he said, oh, that was a budgetary problem. We didn't have the money to produce it. And, I never actually read the articles.
No.
Are you kidding me?
No, there was an audible gasp, but the people, when I still see them, because I mean, you run in the same circles doing this kind of stuff. There's just like, that audible gasp was insane, and they'll still talk about they can't believe what happened.
Oh. Okay. Well, that answers my question.
Yeah. Oh my, that's craziness.
Right. Yeah. Because the Supreme Court, the reason they found the decision reasonable to censor those articles is because of the principal's concerns that they,
privacy or something.
Concerns
yeah, right.
And journalistic standards was kind of like the big umbrella term for giving people a chance to respond, asking for comments, stuff like that. But that's hard to do if you haven't read the articles.
Yeah, I mean, and so if you look at the dissent on it, on all the things that you were just mentioning, Jamie, where their concerns were, that clearly goes back and then supports that Miss Edwards didn't bring up those things that she should have.
Yeah.
Because no names were left in there. Everything, checked out. So why did this happen? Really is what sits with me, is that this could have been avoided. And my question back to Mr. Reynolds after that comment is that, so you realize, though, that you've changed the course of history because you never really bothered to read them?
Right.
Wow.
And he was like, well, it's not that big of a deal. You are making censorship across the country still for kids. And it's still happening today.
Yeah, not that big of a deal. We've been teaching this case for 40 years.
Right. And the Kuhlmeier standard is very deferential to schools, right? Because schools just have to show that, when it comes to school-sponsored student speech, which itself is kind of a fuzzy term that the court didn't do a really good job defining, all has to be, in order for schools to censor that, their actions have to be reasonably related to a legitimate pedagogical purpose. And that's a very low bar. So Tinker, material and substantial disruption, that's a high bar. Hazelwood, if you're in the school-sponsored bucket, is a much lower bar. So this has huge ramifications.
Well, it just sounds like Hazelwood's, attorney team or whatever probably knew that, which is why they gave the reasons that they gave and not the actual reasons that Reynolds gave 30 years later.
Or a changing story indicates, at the very minimum, that you don't want to say the real reason you did something.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we do this show, folks.
Yeah, right.
Case in point.
So one of our questions was going to be, did anything in the decision surprise you when you actually had a chance to read it? But it sounds like everything, maybe.
Yeah. The whole thing went sideways. And it's unfortunate because it is having lasting impact on students. In fact, my son was censored. My son was a high school journalist. He was at Central High School out of Springfield, Missouri, and the way that this mirrors what happened to me is just mind-blowing for me, and I still can't quite process it. He was a junior in high school. He had a new principal. His advisor had just left. Prior to that advisor leaving, my son and daughter both went to the same school. They went to an international baccalaureate school. So it was, the upper echelon of the minds. And this advisor would, it's kind of a cute story how she learned that I was who I was. So my daughter was in her class and they were talking about the case, and this is still the same daughter with them. My mom's a troublemaker. So now she has learned who mom really was, and the teacher was starting to talk about the case. And my daughter says, Miss Gardner, she said, that's my mom. When the teacher had one of those, as she describes it, fangirl moments, she was like, shut up. Shut up. So then from that point on, I would get to go in and talk to her class every year.
Okay.
And then she retires, in comes this new advisor teacher, and my son's on staff, and they were writing it's just a rite of passage story about the water gun game Fight Assassins. Okay. Central High School is one of the oldest standing schools in Missouri, and this story has run year after year. It was the 5 W's, who, what, when, where, why, of who can play. It's a senior, you're off campus, you pay $1 to do it. Whoever gets the target wins, and then, last person standing wins whatever little pool of money.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so this, he comes home and he's kind of hot, and I'm like, what's going on? He goes, the new advisor says we can't run the story. And I'm like, why? He goes, I don't know. She just told us we can't. And I'm like, would you like me to have a conversation? He goes, well, of course. So I call the school the following day. It's after school. He's still in class working on on just furthering the rest of the edition. And so he says, hey, my mom's on the phone. She'd like to talk to you. And I said, hey, this is Eric's mom, Cathy. I said, I just wanted to ask a question. I said, why are you not running those articles? She goes, what business is of yours? What's happening in my classroom?
Huh.
And I'm like,
not this response I would hope.
No. I would not advise that particular response.
I said, well, my son's in your class. How about that? And she was like, no, I'll do whatever I choose in my classroom. And I'm like, okay. I said, so you're a journalism teacher. I said, explain to me then why you would censor. She goes, who do you think you are to know anything about censorship? And I'm like,
so she didn't get the message from the previous advisor about who you were.
You should mention that.
She did. I just never got invited to come to talk to her classes once she took over. And I said, well, remember that case, Hazelwood v. Kuhlmeier? I said, yeah, that's me. She goes, yeah, I was a real world journalist. What about you? And I'm like,
no.
Yes. And meanwhile, my kid is still in the class, and this conversation is escalating, and she's getting upset. And I said, so why would you not support your students? I said, because, part of being an advisor is supporting your kids. And she goes, I'm not going to sacrifice my job for them. And I said, lady, I think you're probably in the wrong profession then. And I said, I need to make some other phone calls. So I'm like, we're done. And I got on the phone with her, and I called back for the principal, and she was in some kind of training. So I got a hold of the assistant vice, and I chewed on that poor man, and I know I chewed on him. And he was like, is she coming up for air at some point?
Yeah.
But I said, this is the problem. I said, just because of this standard, because I don't think he had a clue what any of it meant. And I said, so I think what's happening needs to be looked at. So there was some kind of conversation between him and the teacher. And then when the kids came back in class the following day, here comes retaliation. She told all of the kids, whatever electronics you have, turn them off and leave them on my desk. You're not allowed to have anything. And she said, any letters of recommendation that I've written for you for college, I'll revoke. And she told my son, if any of this continues, that he would not be the editor-in-chief the following year.
Wow. Oh, man.
Yeah.
So me and the SPLC were like best buds. So I had, at that point in time, Frank Lamonti was the executive director for SPLC, and I called him and I said, Frank!
Right.
I said, my kid just got censored. He was like, no, stop it. And I'm like, I'm serious.
Yeah.
Totally serious. So he wrote a letter into the school and helping them to understand what students' rights were. But that's why I still do it, is because it's still happening to kids. It came full circle and hit me again with my kid, and then Mama Bear comes out, and that's never a pretty thing.
Right.
But that's why I do what I do still, is because I want to try and rectify for as many students through the New Voices campaign to get laws overturned and passed at state level to instill rights for students again, to give them some type of protection.
Right. Yeah. And many states have, kind of taken up that challenge and adopted laws that are more protective of student journalists than the kind of constitutional baseline that the court set in Kuhlmeier.
18 have passed.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Okay. That's great.
And I go and I testify in capitals to try and help get that going.
That is a fascinating story. And you know what? I mean, my buddy Chris here is a huge students' rights. I mean, I think we both are, but like Chris has written, books about it and everything. That's the kind of stuff that, we're also pretty passionate about on the show. And it's a combination of advocating for students' rights, but also hoping to use these kinds of stories to educate future school principals, school leaders, about what, just because the courts, and we've said this, I don't know how many times on the show, right? Like, just because the court says that, this is the thing, doesn't mean that it's right.
Right. And just because you can do something doesn't mean you have to.
Or you should.
Right. And, Jamie, you've said this a million times, like, this is all about relationships. And, there are a lot of things to learn about that in a case like this.
Well, and I would say, this Cathy's description of a lot of those relationships, it sounds to me, like Chris said, it's all about relationships. We've talked on the show many times about how many times the cases that we have covered could potentially have gone different ways had there been healthy relationships and good conversations that had taken place. And it sounds to me like, had there been a healthy relationship between Sturgis and Reynolds in the first place, or had there been, or had Reynolds approached you, Cathy, in a completely different way, or had a conversation with you before the paper was being published about potential concerns, if those relationships were there in such a way that it could foster meaningful dialogue, like, there's always a huge chance that these things could have come out differently or not happened at all, right?
100%.
Everything that you mentioned, it reminds me like, oh, breakdown in relationship. Oh, another breakdown in relationship. Oh, that's another breakdown in, and that's what we often see in these cases is like that cascade of relationship breakdowns takes these things to places where sometimes they don't need to go. But
right. And sometimes leads to, maybe some bad law.
Agreed.
If you could try to sum it up in a sentence or a couple of sentences or whatever, when people hear Hazelwood School District versus Kuhlmeier, or just Kuhlmeier at this point, like, what do you hope people will think about? What do you hope their takeaway would be?
Students still should have rights. And if administration would stop and listen to the kids, have good relationships with those students, let them critically think. Because if we're censoring them at high school and the kids are self-censoring because they're afraid of what repercussions might be, are we going to even have a journalism program later down the road? Trust them to make good choices and to let them grow.
Right. And I appreciate that. And I would even take it one step further and say, like, well, it's along the same lines, is if we don't give them the opportunities to make those choices and sometimes fail, where's the learning? Right?
Right.
Like, and so if we take all of that away from them, then what are we left with?
Right. And that's something I often say about student rights is they are educational, right? Like, if schools are designed to promote citizenship and to prepare people for future democratic engagement, we got to teach them how to do it. and rights are how we do that. So we got to respect their rights while they're students.
Listen, Cathy, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk to us tonight, and really appreciate you sharing the story and that detail that, clearly, well, it wasn't in the court opinion.
Most of that wasn't.
No, and that's
enough.
Yeah, and that's the good stuff. I can't thank you enough for coming to talk to us about this, and it was really a pleasure to have you on the show. At this point, we usually toss things over to Chris to give everybody homework. And Chris,
I've got one.
Have you got a good homework for everybody?
I do. Go update your casebooks, your notes, your PowerPoint presentations to Kuhlmeier.
Yeah.
My mind is still blown that I've been mispronouncing it, and I'm so sorry.
Yes.
But we're going to get rid of Hazelwood. We're calling it Kuhlmeier from now on. Chalk and Gavel has spoken.
That's right. That's what we're going to do.
Just encourage the kids to stand up and speak out, because that's one of the things that I always close with when I'm doing presentations, is that stand up and speak out, because it only takes courage for a little bit of time to be brave enough to talk about something, but that's how change begins. It doesn't have to start with an army. It can start with one.
Well said, Cathy. Thank you. And I would say that is a great place to end the episode on, is Cathy's statement there. And I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Cathy. I want to thank everybody for listening. And we want to thank the Martha McCarthy Institute at Indiana University for their generous support of Chalk and Gavel. And go check us out on social media, like, rate, review, all of that stuff. Check out our website, chalkandgavel.com. And we will see everybody back here again in 2 weeks. Thanks a lot and have a good one.